invasive species. So I'll be sharing some fun activities and actions that we can all do to prevent the spread of harmful invasive species. All right, so what are invasive species anyway? We need to know what we're trying to prevent. So invasive species are non-native organisms whose introduction and spread causes harm, impacting the environment, our communities, or our economy. But not every introduced organism is invasive. Like we don't see tomato plants taking over our yards or the forest. So an invasive species has traits that allow them to spread and take over, impacting native species and ecosystems. These are some of the main traits they have. So they produce many offspring, like one of these zebra or quagga mussels could produce 1 million eggs, or one purple loosestrife plant could produce 2 million seeds in a growing season. They also spread easily. So like this orange hawkweed in the top left, that spreads not only by seeds, but also above ground runners and horizontal roots forming dense mats. And because they lack predators and diseases from their native ranges, they quickly establish and thrive, like this American bullfrog that's bigger than our native amphibians and can eat anything it fits in its mouth, even small birds and mammals. So in contrast, a native species is one that naturally occurs in an area and has lived in a place for a long time, like thousands of years. So it's adapted to local conditions and climate and soils. It's evolved with other species, predators, and diseases. So it's part of the natural ecosystem. All right, we're going to have a little quiz here, and thanks to the Invasive Species Council of BC, we have some prizes. So I'm going to have Jenny monitor the chat. I'm going to show a photo, and based on the photo, or then I'll read a little clue. I want you to write in the chat if it's native or invasive. And if you know what it is, that's great as well, but you've got to make sure you write native or invasive. So the first one is the winner. So get your fast typing fingers ready and open up your chat, and I'll give you the first photo. Here it is. So I see some answers in the chat. I was introduced to BC in the 19th century as a berry crop. Now I grow in tall, dense thickets, blocking trails and shading out native vegetation. I see the chat going crazy. I think, is it safe for me to give this one away?
It is safe, but
okay.
You've got a very divided crowd, Steph.
Ooh, interesting. Okay, well, here's the answer. It's invasive, and it's Himalayan blackberry. So I'm curious to know if some people thought it was one of our native berries, because we do have some native similar looking trailing raspberry and some others. So first person who wrote invasive Himalayan blackberry, Jenny, you can make sure to get their contact information, and I'm going to go on to the next one for another chance at winning. Here we go. Coastal First Nations dry my berries into cakes, which were important in trade and as a winter food. Give you another minute. I see a few, the number, I don't see what people are writing. I just see the number getting bigger and bigger. All right, can I reveal?
I think you can reveal.
Thanks, Jenny. So this is native, and it is salal, pollinated by our native bumblebees, and also a really important food for bears and other wildlife. All right, here's our last quiz. And here we go. I was planted in a backyard pond after being purchased at a garden center, but my seeds floated away after a rainstorm, and now I am growing all over a marsh. Native or invasive? Oh my goodness, I see a lot in the chat.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, I think you're safe to give it away.
Great. Okay, so this is invasive, called yellow flag iris, a real problem in wetlands. So congratulations to all of you winners, and we'll follow up with you and get you some cool Invasive Species Council swag. So where do these invasive species come from anyway? How do they get around and spread? Well, often it is from us. We bring them with us, sometimes on purpose, sometimes unintentionally. They could be on our vehicles and gear, in boats, in the soil, on our pets, and more. The good thing about this is if we are the ones spreading them, we can also be the ones to prevent the spread and be part of the solution. So here's a fun activity that you can find on our Invasive Species Council website called Don't Pick Up Hitchhikers, where you can discover how invasive species may spread and how we can prevent them from spreading by practicing play, clean, go. So you can try it out on Earth Day or anytime you're outdoors on your excursions. So the first step is to play. Maybe you're playing in the schoolyard, in the field, or going for a walk in the park, or maybe even a family bike ride. So try putting a big woolly sock over your shoe the next time you're out walking in the woods. Or maybe you want to bring a stuffy to go along on your excursion. Now, the next step is the most important one. Before you leave the site, you need to clean. So gather everyone together and see what plant parts, seeds, insects, or other material you can find clinging to your socks, your stuffy, and your gear, or your tires if you were biking. You can use tools like this blue boot brush, or an old toothbrush could work as well. Sort what you found into egg cartons or collection jars, another use for Brenda's egg carton. So this activity on our website includes a tally sheet that you could use for data collection and to record observations. Magnifiers are a great way to look closer at some of the cool features, how the seeds might disperse, like this close-up, which looks a lot like Velcro, which is a burr with these hooks, which actually inspired the invention of Velcro. And so once you've cleaned up, then you're ready to leave that site and go somewhere else. So you come clean and you leave clean. The activity also includes a certificate in French and English to pledge to help prevent the spread of invasive species by practicing play, clean, go. So why does it matter if invasive species spread anyway? Well, there's many reasons, but one very important one is that BC has amazing biodiversity and we have a responsibility to protect it. And the environmental impacts of invasive species are significant. They're the second greatest threat after habitat loss for impacting our biodiversity. So to demonstrate the impacts of invasive species, you can play invasive plant tag. Many different ways to play it. This is just one. And this is a lesson and set of plant cards for different regions of BC that are hot off the press, not on our website just yet, but we'll be sharing these with you after in our follow-up from HCTF Education. So each card has a native plant on one side and an invasive plant on the other. So students start out as a native plant, like the ones shown here, but then an invasive plant, like some of these, hawkweed, Scotch broom, or knapweed, depending on where you are, you can choose which one, is introduced. And that invader is it in the tag game and tries to tag the native species, which could represent how the plant spreads its seeds or outcompetes the native plant. All right, so watch carefully. So we've got Scotch broom and it's coming closer and closer and closer. It's getting near nodding onion up in the top left. And oh my goodness, it tagged nodding onion. So nodding onion now becomes Scotch broom. And then together they try to tag the native species. And pretty soon more and more of them flip their native species to be the invasive on the back of their card. And they also become it. And so students can quickly see how an invasive species can spread and take over and all the impacts that they have on the native species as well as on the ecosystem. So like the invasive species shown on the previous slide, many invasive plants are beautiful. And so they may end up being bought and planted without people realizing that they can spread and cause problems for native species and ecosystems. So these 6 plants here are some of the top invasive species for sale in garden centers in BC. I'm wondering if anything looks familiar. Maybe some are even in people's gardens. I know I'm always battling with some of these. So try going on a neighborhood walk to see how many of these you can find. And then there are alternatives to these in our these invasive plants that are often planted in our gardens. So one way that you can help protect native species and habitats is to grow an invasive-free garden by being plant-wise. So this Grow Me Instead guide is available as a website and as a downloadable PDF on the Invasive Species Council's website. And it offers native and non-invasive alternatives for the most common invasive species that are sold or planted. And the guide is really handy. It can be used for neighborhood scavenger hunts or for research projects for older students. And it's a valuable tool for planning a garden, like whether it's your own personal garden or for a school, or maybe a naturescape planting like Louisa spoke about. Another way that you can help protect BC's biodiversity is by making sure you don't dump aquarium contents in the water or release pets into the wild. So many invasive species started out as pets. I didn't know before I started working with the Invasive Species Council that a pet goldfish could survive being flushed, if it's alive when you flush it, and can get this big once it enters our native waterways. And it's really important that any new pet Easter bunnies are not let loose to protect BC's biodiversity. And I wanted to share with you that the Invasive Species Council is having a coloring contest until the end of April for students grade 8 and younger to share a message of how you can prevent the spread of invasive species. So I encourage you all to make and submit drawings. And just wanted to remind everyone we can all be invasive wise on Earth Day and every day. May is Invasive Species Action Month. We have lots of contests and events going on, and you can learn about these and more about our Invasive Wise education program as well on our website. So I'm going to stop share for a moment there. Oh, actually, because very exciting, I'm going to pass